Superhero comics have been on a roll this year, and if I were to cite two books responsible for the wave of hype the industry is currently riding on, I'd have to give credit to the launch of Ultimate Spider-Man in January and Absolute Batman in October. On the surface, there are a ton of similarities between the two books. They both feature new versions of iconic superheroes we're all familiar with, are set in alternate universes that their parent companies are heavily pushing to readers, and have been flying off the shelves, selling hundreds of thousands of copies across comic stores all around the world. And to add on top of that, they have been lauded by fans and critics alike, generally being regarded as fresh twists on decades-old characters. Despite their similarities though, there is one glaring difference between the two that I want to talk about today, and no, it does not involve their story. Absolute Batman only has 2 issues so far, so it wouldn't be fair to compare it with the 11 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man that have already been released. Instead, I want to talk about the fan discussions and reactions leading up to the release of both books, because the conversation surrounding Ultimate Spider-Man and Absolute Batman from their announcement up till the release of their first issue could not have been more different. Let's start with Ultimate Spider-Man, a comic that fans looked forward to since the day of its announcement. In September of 2023, Marvel tweeted about the launch of a new Ultimate Universe that would bring readers exciting spins on their favorite Marvel characters. The headline title? Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Checchetto. This was a big deal that made fans extremely excited. Artist Marco Checchetto, fresh off his incredible stint on Daredevil, working with writer Jonathan Hickman, responsible for incredible X-Men and Fantastic Four comics that have won the hearts of readers. I mean, who wouldn't be excited by this team-up? This announcement wasn't the height of the hype though, not even close. The next month, comic covers showcasing Ultimate Spider-Man's selling point were revealed, and in November, a cinematic trailer dropped that would show even more of what was in store. When fans found out that the new Ultimate Peter Parker was a husband to Mary Jane and a father of 2 children, fans could not have been happier. To many, it was a dream come true. For context, one of people's biggest gripes with the Amazing Spider-Man series set in the main Marvel universe of Earth 616 is the relationship status of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. While the couple were married for quite some time in the comics, their marriage was reversed and retconned out of existence in the storyline One More Day by J. Michael Straczynski and Joe Quesada. I don't like talking about One More Day, so you can go online and search about it if you're interested in learning more, but the point is that people have been clamoring to see Peter and MJ back together ever since their relationship fell apart. While there have been Spider-Man comics like Renew Your Vows and Spider-Girl that take place in alternate universes where Peter and MJ are married, none of these books launched with expectations as lofty as the release of Ultimate Spider-Man early this year. So thank the heavens that the comic has lived up to the hype so far. Actually, it's even better than I expected. I actually wasn't one of those extremely hyped fans desperate to read it upon release, but Ultimate Spider-Man has blown me away so far. Even if you don't consider yourself a huge Spider-Man fan, you have to read this comic. Writer Jonathan Hickman, who is usually known for crafting stories with high-concept plots and detailed infographics, takes a sizable swing writing this new Ultimate Spider-Man. Instead of featuring large-scale events that have cataclysmic consequences, or tackling big concepts we can barely wrap our heads around, Ultimate Spider-Man is a down-to-earth and straightforward story that is very much about the personal lives of the protagonists. Of course, there's exciting action scenes to be awestruck by and intriguing mysteries to be unraveled, but at least so far, the comic is more about spending time with the characters as they undergo changes in their lives. Ultimate Spider-Man stars a middle-aged Peter Parker who lives this perfect life and yet struggles with a sense of emptiness. For some reason, he feels like a part of him is missing, and he doesn't know what that part is until Tony Stark, who is Iron Lad in this universe, appears in holographic form and tells Peter that he should have been a superhero in this life. But someone took that opportunity away from him. In order to remedy the situation, Tony Stark gives Peter the radioactive spider that was supposed to bite him all those years ago, along with a Picotech stealth suit to mask his identity. Peter accepts these gifts, getting bitten by the radioactive spider that ends up changing the course of his life forever. As mentioned earlier, the book features a lot of character moments, and that's what makes this Spider-Man origin story so special. Instead of figuring things out on his own, there are people involved in his journey. May, Peter's daughter, is the first person who figures out that he's Spider-Man and ends up deciding the design of Spider-Man's costume in one of the comic book's cutest scenes. Mary Jane is the one who ends up giving Spider-Man's iconic codename in this universe, and Harry Osborn, who dons high-tech armor and calls himself the Green Goblin, becomes Peter Parker's close friend and accompanies him on his crime-fighting crusade. The other huge subplot of the comic involves J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben, who quit their jobs at the Daily Bugle for moral reasons and end up starting their own news media company. The friendship between J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben was not something I expected to love this much, but it is one of the best parts of the book. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 10 focuses solely on the two of them uncovering a pretty dangerous news story. It doesn't even have a single panel with Peter Parker in it, but it is one of the best issues of the entire series. I have yet to talk about the amazing art that brings this book to life. David Messina does some solid artwork when substituting for Marco Cacchetto, the comic's main artist, but the issues that Marco Cacchetto draws brings the comic book to a whole nother level of quality. I mean, look at this artwork. Look how well artist Marco Cacchetto and colorist Matthew Wilson capture the subtleties of characters' emotions. Look at how energetic and detailed the action scenes in this comic are. Look at how stylishly he draws hair full of detail with a glossy sheen that leaves me awestruck. It's insanely good stuff. Marco Cacchetto is able to bring art of premium quality to Ultimate Spider-Man with a style and flair of its own. In conclusion, Ultimate Spider-Man is an amazing comic from top to bottom. Conceptually, it was everything fans wanted, setting out to bring Peter to a more mature stage in life, married to Mary Jane with 2 kids. It was a pitch that almost everyone was on board with, or at least open to, since the beginning. And upon execution, Ultimate Spider-Man has met expectations. The series so far has enamored fans with moments of human vulnerability and dazzled readers with incredible art, action, and loads of Easter eggs. From the get-go, it was loved, and on release, it was loved even more. But the road to Absolute Batman wasn't paved with resounding praise and compliments. When DC announced they were launching a new universe with a Batman that looked like this, fans were hyped but also pretty skeptical on what was to come. Set to release in October, this new Absolute Batman comic would be held by writer Scott Snyder and artist Nick Dragotta. Scott Snyder is one of the most popular Batman writers of all time, and Nick Dragotta is a prolific artist known for his work with Jonathan Hickman, the writer of the current Ultimate Spider-Man on the indie comic East of West, as well as the Fantastic Four. Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta are talented and respective creatives within the comic book circle. People didn't question the book's quality because of them. What fans weren't sure about was, well, if this version of Batman was going to be one that they liked. The cover of the first issue depicts a brooding Batman with a menacing scowl and a body of comical proportions. And I really do mean comical. I mean, look at this guy. This version of Batman is jacked and built like a truck, weighing 250 pounds and standing at 6'6", based on Nick Dragotta's confirmation in San Diego Comic-Con. I bet he could injure me with a flick of his finger if he existed in real life. Also, look at how edgy his design is. He has shoulder pads with spikes, an angular cape with hooks on its ends, and a huge rectangular logo that caused so much ruckus and debate that numerous articles were published about it. These design elements intrigued and excited some fans, while jarring and confusing others. Personally, I think people found Nick Dragotta's Batman divisive not only because he looks like an over-the-top hunk ripped out from 90s comics, but also because he resembles some versions of Batman that we're kind of tired of. Absolute Batman kind of looks like Ben Affleck's Batman from the DCE, which was a divisive take on the character. I'd also like to wager that people were worried that the comic was going to be as ridiculous as some of Frank Miller's edgiest depictions of Batman. Before the release of Absolute Batman, it was also announced that this version of Batman would be a working class man in his 20s instead of a billionaire in his 30s and 40s. This was a pretty interesting choice that caught the attention of many people, since being rich is a prominent part of most iterations of Batman. Fans' expectations were put to the test during the publication of Absolute Batman's first issue. On October 9 of 2024, Absolute Batman Issue 1 was released to the world and gobbled up by the comic book community. Most skeptics ended up loving the new Batman, with many endlessly raving about the book. While not everybody has fallen head over heels for the series so far, the general consensus on the book has been that it is a fresh take on Batman, and based on the 2 issues that have been published so far, I generally agree with that sentiment. Because the Wayne family is middle class in this universe, Bruce grows up in a different environment. Alfred Pennyworth doesn't become his butler and is instead a secret agent for an organization who ends up stalking Batman in the comic, making their dynamic one filled with tension instead of trust. This version of Bruce Wayne grows up in Crime Alley and is childhood friends with Selina Kyle, Harvey Dent, Oswald Cobblepot, and Eddie Nashton. If you don't know who they are, I just mentioned the legal names of Catwoman, Two-Face, the Penguin, and the Riddler in the main DC universe. Having Bruce surrounded by these characters in the Absolute universe poses an interesting question for the future of the series. Will his friends become part of the evil that pervades Gotham City, or join Batman in taking it all down? Speaking of Batman, Bruce's journey to become the Caped Crusader is more down to earth in this universe. Instead of traveling around the world to be trained by master martial artists, this version of Bruce Wayne gets a scholarship to study different subjects in the state's best university, and hops from job to know Gotham City inside and out. As Batman, he also relies much more on being physically intimidating and budget-friendly when it comes to gadgets. His ears act as retractable batarangs, the ends of his cape have hooks to throw enemies around, and his utility belt hides a battle axe in the shape of a bat. I feel like this Batman was made with the intention to be as cool as possible, and if that's what they were going for, I think they did an excellent job. While Absolute Batman hasn't been heavy on the story so far, the way it's presented is what makes it pretty special in my eyes. Nick Dragotta and Scott Snyder have done a great job using unique panel compositions and witty writing to make each page interesting and engaging to read. There are a few pages that contain panels pulled from different points in time or different places at the same time, and they make the comic's simple story have visual flair and complexity. The comic's action is also a delight to the senses. I personally love how snappy it is, especially when Dragotta splits a single image into multiple panels to indicate different moments in time. There's a specific image of 3 spikes coming out of Batman's gauntlet that is split into 3 smaller panels to show that they come out one by one, and there's a satisfying rhythm and snappiness to the scene that makes it so fun to read for me. There are a lot more great things about the art in this comic. The jaw-dropping splash pages that are meant to depict Batman as the coolest character you've ever seen, the more saturated colors and exaggerated body proportions that give this version of Gotham and its characters a distinct visual identity, Frank Martin's unique coloring style that is able to provide clarity and beauty by differentiating the texture of scenes that take place in the past, present, and on television. These are all incredible details that should be commended and help make this book the exciting theme park ride that it is. Despite the skepticism surrounding the announcement of Absolute Batman, the book's combination of stylistic action pleasing to the eye and a unique pitch that sends Bruce Wayne down from his ivory tower has won over the hearts of hardcore and casual fans alike. Ultimate Spider-Man and Absolute Batman may not be the most sophisticated superhero stories to come out, but they've been a big source of joy and excitement for many of us in the comic book space. And that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, to make observations about the different kinds of joy that come from different expectations. Conceptually, Ultimate Spider-Man was a dream come true for fans all around, brewing extreme excitement from the get-go. Meanwhile, Absolute Batman was pitched and presented to an audience that was initially baffled by its aesthetics and skeptical of its radical changes. But in the end, both books resonated with readers. To me, there's something so wonderful about that. On one hand, there's an immense satisfaction that comes when an exciting piece of art seemingly addresses our every concern and fulfills our grandest wishes. But on the other hand, there's also great pleasure in going into a piece of media expecting it to be of questionable quality, only to be proven wrong in the coolest way possible. My name is Joshua C., and I will see you in the next comic book video.